Okay. Well, thank all of you. It's great to be here today. I wish I had a better story about my arm, but I was picking up a piece of luggage and my bicep tore. So getting a little bit older these days. But what a great conference. And thanks for having me. Pope Francis once said that religious freedom is a fundamental human right. And that's why religious freedom is a cornerstone of free societies, especially here in the United States, where it's enshrined in our Constitution, where our founding fathers said Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. We often call it the first freedom, not only because it is first in the Bill of Rights, but because it is the right from which all other rights flow. Religious freedom is part of our national identity. That's why it's a critical component of U.S. foreign policy. The United States must continue to be a voice for the voiceless who are persecuted for their beliefs. I was proud when Congress reauthorized the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom last year. This program can now continue to shine a light on persecution around the world. And I want to thank the Commission for its important work. Tragically, religious freedoms remain increasingly under assault around the world. In China, the Chinese Communist Party is conducting an all-out assault on religion. As we speak here today, they are attempting to completely dismantle the Tibetan Buddhism and the Dalai Lama. They persecute Christians who refuse to turn their backs on their faith and join government-controlled churches. And they are committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims. The stories of forced sterilizations, forced abortions, brainwashing, and even murder are horrifying. That's why I was so honored to lead a resolution condemning the CCP's genocide against the Uyghurs that passed the House in 2021. And I want to thank my good friend, Congressman Jim McGovern, for his great work on human rights, and we often work on these bills together. In Afghanistan, the situation has declined rapidly since the United States withdrew, paving the way for the Taliban to take over. Afghans, many of whom only ever knew the freedoms of the last 20 years, are now forced to live under Sharia law. At the same time, the Taliban is hunting down Christians and other non-Muslims. They now live in constant fear of being killed for their faith. And of course, it's the women in Afghanistan who have really suffered the most. Women no longer have rights. They must remain fully covered outside of their homes. They can't go to school. They can't even go outside without a male companion. And it's heartbreaking to me to see what their lives have become. The women in Afghanistan, unfortunately, aren't alone in their suffering. The brutal regime in Iran continues to persecute women under the guise of religion. Just last year, they brutally murdered Mahsa Amini, a young woman only 22 years old, simply for not wearing her hijab correctly. But I'm proud of the women there who have taken to the streets to bravely protest the Iranian regime and demand freedom. And to all those listening, we stand with you. In Africa, Open Doors reported in January of this year that Nigeria accounted for nearly 90% of the total number of Christians killed and kidnapped worldwide in 2022. And here in our hemisphere, the Ortega regime in Nicaragua continues to attack the Catholic Church. They have imprisoned priests, including Bishop Alvarez, for simply speaking out in support of religious freedom and human rights. Globally, anti-Semitism is tragically still on the rise. Just last week, 7 people were killed and 3 more injured in an attack on a synagogue in Jerusalem. That's why I'm proud to have just introduced the Holocaust Education and Anti-Semitism Lesson Act, or the HEAL Act. This bill will help improve Holocaust education so future generations of Americans are equipped and empowered to stand up for what is right. My father fought in that war. My children think it's ancient history. For me, it's one lifetime away, and our children need to learn the story. As the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I want to assure you I will continue to keep religious freedom at the forefront of America's foreign policy. That includes doing everything we can to shine a light on abuses of religious freedom around the world, and it includes holding perpetrators accountable. We must also send advanced policies to protect the persecuted, and we must help the diaspora in America that have family and friends that have been persecuted for their faith. Because protecting religious freedom isn't just about doing what's right. It's also a matter of national security. By resolving conflict, we can help prevent terrorism at home and abroad. As religious freedoms advance, conflict recedes. And in closing, I'd like to read a quote from one of my favorites, St. John Paul II, that has always inspired me when he said, quote, "Religious freedom, an essential requirement of the dignity of every person, is a cornerstone of the structure of human rights, and for this reason, an irreplaceable factor in the good of individuals and of the whole of society, as well as of the personal fulfillment of each individual." So I want to thank all of you here again today, and let's stand for religious freedom. Thank you.